The C111 you see here, this brightly orange colored car, was a sort of design and development concept for Mercedes-Benz. I know you guys have done some touring around and you've discovered that Irvine, California is definitely a design capital of the United States for sure. This car was developed in Germany as a sort of rolling test bed, as we call it. 1969, the company had the initiative to produce a car to test new technology, mainly. It was never intended to be a production car, but that was certainly a side effect. It had to be cost effective, that if so, they could produce such a vehicle. Many of the features on this car is what we see today on modern cars. If you notice, the glass is actually sealed in with adhesive, which is common to technology today. The mono windshield wiper was used for many years by Mercedes-Benz and a few other manufacturers. Instead of having two windshield wipers, it was thought that one was better. We've gone back to the two wipers again. It does have anti-lock braking system, so as something that was a little bit new technology, we were one of the first people to develop that technology, and was available, I believe we were the first to have that available on a production vehicle in the 1970s. The engine is very unique in this vehicle. It is a rotary engine. A rotary engine is as many of you may know, is a completely different idea as far as how engine technology should work. It doesn't have reciprocating parts, it has churning parts. So these four rotors in this engine basically spin at high speed and produce the power for the engine. Unfortunately, rotary technology, albeit very compact, lightweight technology, and very speedy acceleration and top speed, has one of the drawbacks of being high in fuel consumption. 1973, oil crisis, cars are getting, especially in the United States and California, the smog and pollution control was of utmost importance. So this car really suffered from that fate. Rotaries company-wide for Mercedes-Benz was sort of thrown out and then back into standard internal combustion piston engines as well as diesel engines. The car is a fiberglass steel composite, so it's a little bit different design technology for Mercedes-Benz at that particular time. So it was really to test all these new ideas of what we should be putting into our vehicles and technology-wise. Probably the most striking feature of the car, obviously, is that it's orange. You have to remember this was going into the 1970s, sort of new and vibrant colors. To see this at Geneva Motor Show or Frankfurt and think about something this wild coming out was pretty amazing. And still today, we have people that come in here and they said, I had a little quirky model of that car when I was 10 years old, and I've always wanted to see one. And this is the only chance, actually, that a person has in the United States is to see a car like this is here. They built right around between 10 and 15 units. They did crash test several of them, so some of those cars are gone, but the rest of them still exist. They were never sold. They all remain in the possession of Mercedes-Benz, the Mercedes-Benz Museum. Being a part of that, we do have cars scattered throughout this evening that do belong to Mercedes-Benz Museum, part of their vast collection. And some of them for sale, as you'll see, but this is one of them from the museum.
This is a 1928 630 with a K motor, a compressor motor. It is a car that, typical to the period, was delivered as a motor and chassis and then was sent to a coach builder. This particular car has coach work by Jacques Sauchek. That was a coach builder out of Paris, a very famous coach builder. Typical to the Sauchek cars were the full wheel covers, which was unusual back in the 1920s. Most cars really had exposed wire wheels. It really didn't have this full wheel cover that you see very commonly today. The lamps, very typical Sauchek aspect of a Sauchek design, is this kind of trapezoidal design that's repeated back here in the positioning lamp. The car is what we would call a roadster, even though you wouldn't think of a big car like this as a roadster. But a roadster in our lexicon of cars is a car that has a completely retractable soft top. This particular car, the soft top is in a compartment back here. It opens up much like a modern car. You pull the soft top out. It's a dual position roof, so you can close the roof to this position and leave the front open so your poor driver is freezing in the front, you're nice and warm in the back, and you can close it all the way. Also, very interesting aspect on a Sauchek car, I'll show you on this side. This car has what you could call an early application of a power window, although it is mechanically driven. It's a geared drive. You release the lever and it raises up. This was a time where many cars didn't have side windows. Many cars still had curtains and plastic windows. So that's quite unique for a Saucek car, very typical to all the Saucek cars. This particular car was delivered to a banker in New York, so it has a very strong U.S. history. Always was owned by someone from the United States. The car is for sale under consignment from the owner, and it can be bought tonight for $750,000. What is also very significant about the car is that this is a so-called compressor car. We were very famous in racing in the 1920s for our supercharged cars. This particular car is evocative of that period. It is a supercharged 6-cylinder car originally designed by Ferdinand Porsche. So Porsche had to start with us, and he designed many of the famous race cars from the 1920s, which we were very successful. The 1954 220 Cabriolet. Interesting car is what we would call an art car. This particular car was one of 12 cars that were restored by a famous Japanese artist named Hiro Yamagata. And Hiro Yamagata took these cars, you can take a look through the book here, and restored a series of 12 cars in white primer, and then proceeded to have his art students paint the cars. This was done in Malibu, California in the 1990s. They're all quite interesting, all a little bit different. Generally having some kind of nature motif or floral motif to it. Famous collection. He spent a ton of money on these cars. The unfortunate part of the story is he went bankrupt on it. So the cars were actually bought up by another collector about 5 years ago, and he sold off the cars, and we recently bought one of the cars for our collection. The car will go to Stuttgart to become part of the Mercedes-Benz museum collection there. They're beautiful cars. The cars are very well restored. If you look on the inside, they're quite normal or standard, but the paint job is really over the top. It's fun to drive a car like that. You wonder why everyone's staring at you, and then you remember.
In 1926, actually, the companies merged together. So it was originally two separate companies, Daimler and Benz, and then they formed Mercedes-Benz. And this is one of the byproducts of that merger, was the creation of this car. It has a 5.4-liter supercharged engine, so again, using the compressor technology from the racing area and adapting that into production vehicles. These cars were some of the most expensive at the time. Bare chassis would cost 10 times more than a normal Ford would in the United States. So they were really the ultimate elite status symbol. Much like today, Mercedes-Benz does create some very, very unique vehicles. We have a McLaren SLR that you'll see in there, which is the top range-topping car, the fastest car that Mercedes-Benz currently makes. And this was the fastest car that you could buy from Mercedes-Benz at the time. This is a Cabriolet A, so the Cabriolet means that it has two side windows and a convertible top with 4 seats, generally 3 to 4 seats depending on how the car was actually configured. This one has a little transverse seat in the back, so you kind of sit sideways if you're unlucky enough to be in the back of this car. You'll notice that the dual spares at the time weren't that good, so they needed 2 spare tires instead of just 1. We've actually seen some of the even earlier cars in the teens and 20s that had 4, 6 spare tires on board, just in case, especially here in the U.S. with the horrible, horrible road conditions that were around at the turn of the century. Really, this car was also a byproduct of the Autobahn, the newly created Autobahn in the 1930s. They actually called it the empty Bahn for a while because no one actually drove on it. No one had cars. I think something like maybe 1 in 10 of Germans in the 1930s actually owned a car. So to drive something like this must have been an absolute joy in these nice, straight, long runs of the Autobahn. And nobody has some engine turning that was done, which added hundreds of hours of labor. And really, these cars were hand-built and custom-made for each individual owner if they wished. They also had standard bodywork, and this would have been an example of standard coach work from Mercedes-Benz. Like the 630 over there, that car was built, the Mercedes-Benz built a chassis, and then the car was sent out to have a separate body built onto that chassis by someone else. Here it was, you could buy a very elegant coach work directly from the factory. So it was kind of a new idea to have these very, very unique looking cars available directly from the manufacturer instead of going through someone else.